I was waiting for you.
Oh.
It's okay. But hi everyone, welcome to the Summer Bookish Podcast, Acre District Library's one and only podcast. And hey Grant, what are you watching, reading, playing, doing? We're just jumping right in there.
Well, I'm going to do an Uno reverse, kind of. First, I'm going to be talking about a movie that me and Tony have seen.
Oh, okay. I was like, Uno reverse.
What am I speaking of, Tony?
Mickey 17.
Yes.
I loved that movie.
I went and rented the. I just checked out the book.
Yeah, so the book is called Mickey 7.
Yeah, I checked out the book. It's at my house now.
The movie makes good use of the number 17, I'll just put it that way. Yes, so Grant, what did you think?
Yeah, I think we have different opinions slightly. I thought it was okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that because you've seen the director's
I'm sure that has
previous movies, or
I'm sure that has some impact on that.
Sure.
So how would we describe Mickey 17? Mickey 17 is, I would call it like a sci-fi comedy adventure,
Definitely.
whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Starring what's his face?
Robert Pattinson.
Yes.
The love of my life.
Our boy.
I would even go as far as to call it a sci-fi satire.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is definitely a satire.
Yeah.
Some of which I wish could have been a little subtler, a little
That's fair.
more devious, maybe. I don't
Sure.
know.
Yeah.
I mean, on a basic level, it's enjoyable as a movie, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I love the world.
Yeah.
I love going through all the, I feel like the production design, they did really well, like on the ship, and making it feel like people actually live there and whatnot.
That's true. They did a really good job with that, which is, yeah.
And all the various little secret hallways and stuff. I kind of want to be there, even though it's a terrible situation, you know?
Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo does an admirable job as the Trump stand-in.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mark Ruffalo as Space Trump is not what I thought I needed in 2025, but turns out to be exactly what I needed in 2025. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's trying to say a lot of things. I don't know if these various things that it's trying to say form a cohesive whole.
Sure.
I also thought it could have done without the narration. Or at least
Interesting.
sparser narration.
Yeah.
Because I know after we watched it, you were talking about how you thought it dealt with what's the word I'm looking for? Getting information across, you know.
Yeah, it communicates well, like it's expository in
Exposition, yes.
Yeah, I think it's
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is a bit heavy.
Sure.
I think if they would have just cut a little bit of it out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I did read that Bong Joon-ho fought for Final Cut on this, and the studio tried to, So I know there's some friction there as well.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see a different cut of it and see how that turns out. But,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not bad by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
And obviously you liked it a lot more than me, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm curious what a second viewing would, like, what things I would care about on a second viewing. I loved everything about it from beginning to end, which I did not expect at all. I didn't go in with many expectations. I knew Robert would be great because I just think he's one of our best at this point in time. There's quite a list of people within his generation that are doing, like, on the older end with Robert Pattinson, and then on the younger end with Timothée Chalamet, there's a whole group of them. Some of them are super famous like those two. Some of them are like Josh O'Connor are sort of still finding their voice. But the thing that I think that should be most appreciated about today's crop of young actors and actresses is that they're unafraid of anything. They will play any film genre. They will play with any director.
They're not putting themselves in a box.
Exactly. They're not putting themselves in a box at all, and they don't allow anyone in their career path to put them in a box because they're all reaching for a level of greatness that I don't think even they were raised watching. Like, I don't even think the kinds of movies that were popular when they were all growing up were all cookie cutter box, studio.
The early
pictures.
2000s was a wasteland.
Yeah, and this group, they know that they have the power to make change, and they don't care which direction they go in. I've never seen as many male actors playing gay male characters just because, and you have no idea at the end of the day what their sexualities are because it doesn't actually matter. Like, and they're proving that by just going, yeah, sure, I'll play another gay character. And it's not a big deal. The media makes a big deal out of it because it's the media. But the actual actors and actresses themselves, they just
the role.
They just do the role and
almost
they
like
keep
the
moving.
Film stands on its own.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think that it's really nice to see a group of young artists sort of not caring caring in the sense that they care about their art form more than they care about their name, which is interesting when you think about it. But anyway, that's a whole tangent.
So to wrap that up, I did like it. I think it could have benefited from some cuts.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Cuts,
Sure.
maybe just be cooked over for a little while longer. But
Yeah,
that's just
no,
me.
I get that. Yeah.
As far as what I'm reading, I'm continuing to read Things Hidden Since the Foundation of the World by Rene Girard. I'm also reading Cosmos and History by, oh God, how do you even say his name? Mircea Eliade.
Sure.
I probably yeah.
You probably butchered that, but oh well.
Yeah,
Another French guy, huh?
No, I think he's either like Austrian or
Oh.
maybe I'm just
He
thinking.
sounds Belgian.
Maybe I'm thinking of that because he's a fascist, but
What's the book called?
Cosmos and History. He was an awful person, but
Sure.
interesting writer.
Oh, well,
Yeah, so he was a historian, theorist, whatever.
Yeah.
He's another polymath similar to Rene.
Oh, sure, yeah.
This specific one, it's on the myth of the eternal return, which not to be confused because Nietzsche has his own concept of the eternal return, which is more of a metaphor.
Sure.
But with this he looks at different societies and stuff in the past and kind of comes up with a grand theory of ritual.
It's Romanian.
Romanian, okay, thank you.
Oh, that would explain the fascism.
Yes.
Not saying Romanians are fascist, but fascism played a major part in a certain part of their history. That's what I'm saying.
It does, in fact.
Yes.
And basically what he's saying is primitive ritual was an attempt to return to a undifferentiated mythical time. So to them, basically, these rituals, they're not just recreating these mythical events. They're almost bringing down, they're recreating the world by recreating the creation myth and everything. It's a whole bunch of stuff.
That's interesting.
It is interesting.
Okay.
And the second you started talking about archetypes, I was about to throw the book away because I was like, oh God, he's a Jungian.
Oh, we're doing eugenics! Yay!
But it is not. And in fact, there's in another edition of the book, in an introduction, he says, I am not talking about the Jungian archetypes when I'm talking about this. It's a different thing.
Oh,
So
sure.
I'm reading those two things.
Yeah.
Game-wise,
Oh,
did I mention that I started Death Stranding or no?
No.
No? Okay, so I started Death Stranding.
Okay.
I've always wanted to try out. Who created it? Thank you. Yeah, Metal Gear Solid. I've always wanted to try out one of his games.
Oh, sure.
Hideo Kojima?
Hideo Kojima, yeah. See,
Well, see, I didn't even need that. I already knew who it was.
Kojima. I've always wanted to try out a Kojima game.
Yeah.
Just because he's held in such high esteem by gamers in general, and
Yeah.
I don't know, he just seems like an interesting figure. He loves film. He brings a lot of cinematic elements to his games.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
And I'm not very far, but so far it's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a
If
very...
I remember that right, he's June 26th. There's a second one.
Yes. I
There's
heard
a
about
Death
that.
Stranding 2
Doesn't it have a subtitle or something? It's like Death Stranding. Blah, blah,
on
blah.
the beach.
On the beach. Which is confusing because there's already a movie called On the Beach, and is that a reference?
That's such a weird.
He's a weird guy.
He's really cool though.
He is cool, but at this point, I just don't know what to make of it.
Sure.
Really, it is a very extended tutorial.
Oh,
And
sure.
lots of
Okay.
cutscenes, so I feel like I haven't been fully thrust into it. It's a very calming game in some ways. Lots of traveling. You're basically a delivery boy for various factions. Your mother is the president, I'm pretty sure. It's very convoluted.
That's interesting.
But that sounds fun. I like that. That's hilarious.
No, it's fun. He very much comes from the school of Kingdom Hearts storytelling, where it's just so complicated that's part of the appeal, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kinda fun.
That's Kingdom Hearts storytelling.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. I'm excited to see Nicholas Winding Refn voice somebody. He's a director. And
Yeah.
Yeah, I've already met, what's his face? Guillermo del Toro's character.
Oh,
which was interesting.
fun.
So, yeah.
Huh. Okay. That's trending. I have to look at that.
So, Aaron, what are you
Yes?
reading? What are you reading, talking? What are you
Not reading anything at the moment. And that's just because it's just what my brain is doing.
No, that's fine.
So, in the past week and a half, I've started watching Chicago Med. Because I've been becoming more upset. I'm trying to get used out of my streaming services because everyone in my household uses the streaming services more than I do.
Oh, sure. That's fair.
So
That's
I
fair.
started watching Chicago Med, which then led me to remembering that The Pit exists, and it just started. Well, it was close to ending. And so everyone on there was talking about Noah Wiley, who plays one of the characters in ER. And so I was sitting there going, okay.
And he's the central star for The Pit, am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's
Yeah.
He's a central star for both, technically.
Oh, is he? Oh, okay.
So I was like, okay, The Pit, great, we're all talking about it. I want to watch ER first because, like, there's so much hype around The Pit that I don't want to watch it and then have all these people hype it up with being, like, the most accurate, and then being, like, disappointed.
People are so absurd with medical dramas. I don't know why you would go into a medical drama hoping to find medical truth. That makes no sense. But carry on.
So I'm watching ER right now. I'm like most of the way through season 1. Having a great time. There was this lady who I was watching an episode last night with, and she looks almost exactly. It's not the same lady because I had to look it up. She almost looks exactly like the lady who plays Angelica Schuyler in Hamilton.
Oh.
She looks like to a T. Like they are like almost.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Renee something. I don't remember her name.
Yeah.
But like, it's not the same lady. But they look exactly the same. And I'm sitting there going, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god.
Yeah.
I am laughing though because some of the storylines for ER are the exact same as Chicago Med, and I'm like, well, I know where they got this from because it's like to a T, almost the exact same, minus like maybe a few tweaks here or there. That if you're not paying attention, you don't know. Also, there's this lovely kid who has a cognitive disability named Patrick in the show, and he comes in every once in a while, and he's really cute. It's adorable. He's where the "This is Patrick" meme from SpongeBob comes from. Because he answers the phone in one episode, in like the 6th episode, and he's just sitting over there waiting for his dad. Because he will walk over from wherever he's at to the hospital. And, like, that's his kind of thing. He'll, like, leave the house and walk over without anybody realizing. And so the phone is ringing at the ER and nobody's at the phone. And so he just answers. He's like, hello? This is not the ER. This is Patrick. Habla Espanol. Like, out of nowhere. And so he's, like, I'm like, oh, that's where that comes from.
Do you think it's an actual reference to SpongeBob? Or
No, because the ER episode came out first.
Oh, I thought you were talking about...
SpongeBob is a reference.
So SpongeBob probably is referencing ER. Because SpongeBob does that. It references
and it was such
weird
a
things.
slight reference where I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, this is this.
That's kind of cool, actually.
And then I'm playing, obviously, Sims, which I'll get to in a second. I'm replaying Old World, which is kind of like a Civilization dupe.
Yeah.
Because they just came out with a expansion pack where now you have natural disasters. So that's fun. And then I'm excited for Crusader Kings 3. They're doing their I think it's chapter 4, which they like separate their DLCs and everything into chapters.
Okay, yeah.
And the thing you need to know about Crusader Kings is there's like usually like hundreds of DLC for this.
Yeah.
They're adding all of Asia.
Like the whole continent?
Like China, Japan, Korea.
Yeah,
they're adding the whole entire continent to the game.
It's like a whole other game.
That's
so all of
absurd.
us on like line are just going, so what you're saying is we can start in Asia and conquer all of Europe Absolutely. And so now everybody's kind
Just
of
remarkable.
making plans for that.
It's remarkable enough. Actually, that makes me actually want to study the Middle Ages and Renaissance to figure out why they didn't. Because
See, here's the thing, though. It's not set in the Renaissance.
No, I know. I'm just saying.
The game is set in the heathen army, which is the 768. So that's the Vikings.
So that would have been what they call the Dark Ages.
Yeah. So it starts then, and it goes, I believe, technically to Renaissance.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it ends when the Mongols invade.
Right,
Europe.
which would have been in like the 1600s, I think.
Yeah, that's when it basically ends. However, I'm excited to see where this goes now, because now the game doesn't have the excuse to end when the Mongols invade. Because they're gonna be there.
Because they're gonna be there the whole time, yeah.
They're gonna be there the whole time.
Yeah.
And you can't go... Before, you could only go to, like, the end of Russia, and that was it. Which was split into multiple areas anyways. Now, you can't... Now you can go over even farther. So it'll be interesting to see if they make it its own separate map, or if they turn around and then make it add it onto the whole entire map.
Yeah.
Or how they're gonna do it. Meanwhile, while I'm waiting for that to occur, I'm playing Sims with my Sims self, and I'm playing the Strangerville pack, which is kind of like their dupe of Stranger Things.
Sure.
There's like some weird plant that's possessing people underneath the whole entire town, and it's kind of like a Roswell, New Mexico kind of...
And people wonder why I don't like Stranger Things. Anyway, carry on.
But wait, there's more. So, like, I'm playing that, and, like, I'm doing that specifically, and I wanted to be a detective, so I'm being a detective at the exact same time, and it's very entertaining. My sim couldn't find anybody to date, so I sent her on a blind date for Love Day, which is their version of Valentine's Day, and she ended up in a date with this character named Rory, who is from the Werewolf expansion pack. And so she's this giant muscle lady, werewolf lady, who's the head of her, like, little pack or whatever. And I sat there and I went, you know what? Why not? And so I sent them on a date. They got along really, really well, surprisingly. And so now they're dating. And my character and her girlfriend just went underneath the town and defeated the giant plant monster to save everybody.
Nice.
And so now I'm sitting here going, do I move her into my house? Rory. Or do I not? So I'm deciding that right now.
Okay, fair.
And that's what I'm doing. Hi,
Nice.
Tony. It's your turn. It's your turn.
So I just finished playing, well, I say just, like, I think Friday. I just finished playing Jedi Fallen Order again because I felt like playing a longer form game, and I often replay games anyway, so I was doing that. I'm going to move on to Jedi Survivor sometime this week when I get around to it.
Oh, I finally updated that game. It took me forever.
Jedi Survivor?
Yeah, I
Yes.
was waiting for updates on my game because it was, like, being laggy.
Oh, sure.
And so every time I went to go update it, I just never actually finished. And so it's been sitting there for like half a year, just like not updated.
no.
And so I finally did that the other day.
Yeah, no. I'm excited because it's my favorite game of all time, period. No notes needed. So I'm excited to just play that again because I'm always playing. I just love playing the game. What am I... Oh, okay, I'm watching... This could go in any order. Whatever. I'm watching 2 anime right now. I'm doing a rewatch of both, actually. One of them I have not rewatched in full since I was, like, 8. And I don't think I saw it in full then either. I just saw it until, I was no longer allowed to watch television on that block of time or whatever. I don't remember. You know how it was being a kid. So
What were you watching?
I was watching the American English dub of Sailor Moon, which, by the way, is not available on any streaming.
Oh, so you watched it with Serena and Darian going on.
Serena and Darian. Oh, God, Darian. Anyway, yes, so I did it, or I am currently rewatching that because I was able to find an eBay release, which was wonderful. That's the only way that you can find it, by the way. You can find like bootleg streaming versions where you have to fight through 15 commercials and all these pop-ups in order for it to work, or you can go on Google and some wonderful person has already taken all of that stuff out and put it on DVDs, made it available for you to purchase, which is what I did. So I am rewatching them. It's Sailor Moon Crystal is way better. So if you just want to experience Sailor Moon, just watch Sailor Moon Crystal. It's directly from the manga.
Yeah, the source material.
Yeah, and the source material is much, much cooler than the English dub that I watched as a child, because the English dub you watch as a child is literally like, and the monster of the week is...
They sanitize
and they
that.
really sanitize it. Like, for example, in the graphic in the manga and Sailor Moon Crystal, it is very obvious that Usagi, Sailor Moon, has a major crush on Sailor Mars. Yeah. Because the instant that she sees her, she's like, oh, I'll do anything for a pretty girl. That's in the book and in the show. So it's like, it's not even like, oh, well, maybe. So what they did in the American English dub, because this was the 90s.
They had a rivalry.
They had not only a rivalry, one of the stupidest rivalries I've ever seen ever. It's dumb.
They hated each other because they both wanted Darien, and it was like a whole thing.
It was so stupid. And it's even before it gets to the point where they're like fighting over Darien, they're just fighting just because two girls can't get along with each other. What kind of nonsense is that? When literally the entire manga, the point of the whole manga is, hey, look at all these girls who get along with each other because they literally have to defend each other and the universe.
Meanwhile, you have, like, in the show, in the English dub, you have Mercury, Sailor Mercury, just sitting there going, guys,
yeah, she's the girl in the corner, like, but can we, oh, wait, no. And then, of course, my favorite cat to hate on, because I do love her, but she's so annoying. Luna. I love her, the voice actor for her, because she's basically a British old lady who isn't Maggie Smith somehow. And it's great. But every time there's a problem, any time that's obviously a problem, she's like screaming at the 5-year-olds that this was designed for. It must be the Negaverse. And you're like, oh no. Like, it's almost like, it's campier somehow than, like the Force and Darth Vader.
See,
it's
the thing
really
is, though,
weird.
That's a problem for like a lot of what they did during that time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because they did that for a lot of shows.
Yeah, because
it's called we call it the 4Kids dub curse.
Yeah.
And so if like 4Kids who like was doing your Saturday morning cartoons took your anime, you knew all the kids knew it was getting butchered. Like, for example, Yu-Gi-Oh! When it was, like, a whole entire thing and getting dubbed English on 4Kids. Yeah. They turned around and... So, the funny part is, when you lose a duel, you're supposed to go to the Shadow Realm. Ah. The Shadow... And that's what they say in the show. Yeah. The Shadow Realm, you're supposed to die. That's what it is. Oops. You're supposed to die. And so in the show, they made it seem like it was something a lot lighter. Sure. And I think there's like a whole entire scene where there's technically a gun, but they reanimated the show so it's not there for the 4Kids dub. It's like a whole thing, and I forgot how much they changed, and that'll be I'm going to make a whole entire episode about the 4Kids dub.
I mean, I will say this, that the animation... Before the American dub even got a hold of it to dub it, the animation had already gone to the Monster of the Week kind of thing. Like, they had already sort of sold Sailor Moon up the river. Because, we're not the only misogynist, homophobic country out there. Japan kind of does that about 15 times better than we do. So they had already kind of done a lot of that in the original, like, Sailor Moon animated thing, but when it got translated, they doubled down. And it just got really weird. But I'm having fun with it because it was from my childhood, so, I love it. The other anime that I'm rewatching at the moment is... it's so good. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is one of the staples, but it's a staple for a reason. It's so good. And I always forget how good it is because the first, 12 episodes is building up space for the rest of the show to, happen. Mm-hmm. And I always forget that until about, episode, it's when... Okay, spoiler alert. It's when Mustang does the thing to the one homunculus. Mm-hmm. That... moment is where the show takes off because you're like, wait a minute, you can do it. No. And he's an adult.
It's
so
Mustang.
It's Mustang and his whole
That's all we care about. It's Mustang.
He's very confused. He's wounded and his whole little.
Mustang's hot. We like him.
He's literally hot because he can do stuff with fire, but he's also
he's actually hot.
Donkulously hot. It's ridiculous. For a cartoon especially, but he's an adult man. We love this for him. So that's the point. I just love that show, and I'm in the trenches of it now, and it's great. And then I'm reading right now. I am currently halfway through volume 2 of My Hero Academia because I finally started reading it. I love it. I think the one thing that I enjoy about the anime a little bit more at this point is that they smooth Horikoshi's... Horikoshi loves Horikoshi, okay? Let's be clear about that.
Yes, we know.
And the thing that I love about that is that he goes up against his friends and his editorial team hard. Do you know, for example, the editorial team told him that All Might was not a good hero? They literally said to him, who's going to follow that guy? He's an old man. No one's going to follow him as a hero. Why would he be the number one hero? Don't you think it should be like a pretty boy? And Horikoshi was like, no. And then he showed it to all of his friends, and all of his friends laughed him out of the room. They were like, that's All Might? Are you kidding me? Who's going to follow that character? Well, good thing he was right. Whenever he follows his instincts, he's right. Like, in all of his, like, little, like, notes that you get along the way as you're reading, there's always some little bit of him that's like, for example, Hagakure was supposed to be a boy. But he was like, that's
interesting.
Yeah, right? It is, right? But he was like, but then I hated it, so I just changed it. And then suddenly I was like, oh, wait, she's way more fun as a girl. Which, I don't know how I feel about that, given he's a grown man drawing a 15-year-old girl who goes invisible. And who's literally invisible the whole time. But he also likes drawing hands, which is probably where Shigaraki came from. So I think the hands
So are we saying that
Horikoshi
Horikoshi is a hand king?
We're not saying he doesn't.
Say that Horikoshi probably keeps that to himself, but I would not doubt it.
You would say that, but why are we having all the hands in My Hero? Like, bruh.
Because he literally, like, there's one note where he says, like, I really like drawing hands, but I didn't, because he believes that hands are the second most emotive part of the body, or, like, expressive part of the body, the face being the most obvious one, which I thought, as an artist, that kind of makes sense, right? But then there's the other thing where he was like, yeah, so every week trying to draw all those hands has really driven me a little bit crazy, and I regret these decisions. But, you know, congrats to him. He finished the whole thing. Proud of him. And then the other thing I'm slowly reading is Sailor Moon, because I've never read them. So, you know, there we are. And Sailor Moon was written and drawn by a woman of color.
Yeah, she was. You know what today's topic is?
Wait, what? What is it, Aaron?
Women authors of color.
Oh, wait! It's almost like I knew that. I'm sorry. We're totally breaking the fourth wall. It's fine.
There's a fourth wall. We had one.
Speaking of women of color, so first of all, Real Housewives of Atlanta is back on, and I am so ready for this new season, because the behind the scenes of getting the season produced was already dramatic, so you know that it's going to be dramatic. But there was a clip going around, I'm going to make this really short, of one of the most iconic characters, because she was so dumb she didn't know that the Underground Railroad was not a real railroad system. So that's how she started. But in this current version of the show, she's returned, and she's like going in on the most problematic housewife in a long time, because she just does nothing but lie. And she's like going in on her, and then all of a sudden the girl's trying to like back her way out of it, and she goes, is production here? Can I break the fourth wall? And then production goes, yep, go ahead. And I'm like, oh, that's us.
No, here we go.
We're just breaking the fourth wall. And yeah, boy, does she break the fourth wall. Anyway, women of color who write. That's what we're here for.
I brought you small things.
I see.
I just brought like random like articles that I found online.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this to Grant before you got in here and before we were actually recording.
Yes.
And so I was trying to find reputable like sources, like actual magazines that had articles about the importance of women of color writers.
Yeah.
There are only 2 in there. One from Time Magazine and one from Harvard Magazine, and the rest are from blogs. I think there might be a Book Riot article, and I kind of put that half and half.
Yeah.
Which I don't remember which articles are which, because I just had them simplified, because otherwise it would take like 1,000 pages, and I don't want to deal with that.
Exactly.
But like there's like barely any articles. In the articles that I find, and this is like the most like baffling thing to me, and I understand why, because you know.
Racism.
Because, you know, this.
Oh, yeah.
But,
right,
like...
Yeah.
Well, I thought you were, like, pointing at your, like, Michigan on your hand.
Yeah.
I was like...
Because Michigan. But, like, all the articles, when I'm looking up, like, women of color authors, it's just, like, book countdowns. And that's all they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just book countdown. It's like, you need to read these books. Great. But, like, I want to know, like, what we've changed in the past, like, decade about the fact that, like, like, certain genres are getting more, like, authors of color or things like that. But, like, no.
I will
nothing.
say that I think the most...
like throwing things at a wall.
Yeah, I think one of the most infuriating things to happen, because, in 2014 you had the We Need Diverse Books launched for the very first time as a website and as an organization. One of the founders of whom is a black woman. She's not a black woman that I really enjoy all that much from my experiences with her as a person, and she's definitely not someone that I enjoy as a writer, because I think she does the thing that I find the least tasteful and I've seen it happen a lot with women of color authors from 2014 to 2024. I think there are exceptions, like R.F. Kuang is an exception.
Love
because
her.
She literally, like, think about
Who's
this.
the girl who also wrote Iron Widow? I like her too.
Oh, Ziran Zhao. Yeah, Xiran
Zhe.
Zhao. Yeah. I was like, wait, I'm trying to remember my Chinese characters. I've not read her yet, but I'm actually, or them? I can't recall. Anyway, but I think that, like, between 2014 and 2024, there's a whole decade, right? We see in every corner of literature in America,
Neutral.
and that includes
Neutral pronoun.
Neutral, okay. That includes nonfiction and poetry. For black women in particular, that's a hotbed of that decade. In the future, if anyone wants to get a solid literary degree and write about a decade in which we saw literature literally change, 2014 and 2024 will be the decade that they should be writing about, because, academics pay attention, because we see this massive influx all over every form of literature. So poetry, essays, biographies and autobiographies, more memoir than anything, but still, we see this happening in fiction on all age levels and in all genres and in, across the whole board. You see this massive influx of just black women authors. That doesn't even cover all women of color, which is fascinating to me. But at the same time, when you look at the actual content, which I made it a personal mission of mine during that time. I didn't know it was going to last a decade. I thought it would last maybe perhaps longer. But my fatigue ran out before that decade ran out. Like, before we got to 2024, I was already annoyed because the only thing that you seemed to see is people signifying a work simply because it was either written by a woman of color or written about girls of color, but nothing else seemed to signify or specialize or make it good or interesting or anything. And on the one hand, we don't hold white women to that standard at all.
We should.
Right?
We should.
We should. I completely agree. We should. But we don't. Like, no one ever, even now, no one ever looks at Harry Potter and goes, hey, the fact that it is derivative is maybe something we don't like. Now, I would point out to people that, like, the derivative nature of Harry Potter is exactly the point. I mean, that's there's a certain kind of writing that allows for that. And she does really well with it.
It's right there.
It's right there. She's still a transphobe, but she does well with it, right? I think what I'm seeing, or what I have seen with a lot, not everyone, but with the bulk of fiction by writers of color between 2014 and 2024, is a lot of, well, this story exists, but it doesn't exist with a black girl at the lead. Or this story exists, but it doesn't exist with... Now, astonishingly enough, not enough gay kids, but we're not going to talk about that. We'll wait for June. But there has been, there's a major influx, and people would have all these Twitter arguments about, hey, is this... why are we trashing this book before it even gets off the ground? Is it because it was written by a black woman featuring a black girl? But if it had been done by a white woman with a white girl, would you have hated it as much? And it's like,
yes.
That's true. However, like, for example, let's take Fourth Wing as an example, which is not written by a woman of color or about women of color, right?
Right.
if a black woman had written Fourth Wing and had a black girl as the main character, I guarantee you one thing: it might have been popular, but it would never have been what it is now.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Right?
That is so true.
And that's the sad part.
And the extra sad part is like, yeah, she's a white woman. Her main male lead is not white at all.
No.
And
they never are. I was like, can't be that.
No.
Oh.
But the thing is, she has to come out, and every single time she has to do like any type of media thing, she has to turn around and look at the camera and go, Xaden is not white. Like, every single time, because everybody who's reading it just goes, here he is, here's
Because
my fan art, and they just don't get it, even though he's never described
supposed to be hot, and in our country, the default for hot is somebody's little white boy.
She literally describes skin tone!
But let's go back. Speaking of women of color, let's go back to a little known character. She was 11 years old when she died in the book. Let's go back to a little known character named Rue from the Hunger Games.
Oh my god, that was such a nightmare.
Anyone remember when she was cast and everyone lost their minds because they were like, Rue is not black. The book does not say. And there were so many copies of that paragraph where she's initially introduced to Katniss where it's obvious. It's not even like, oh, well, we assume because everyone else from that district is black. No, it's stated outright that both Rue and the person she came with are brown.
I mean, here's the thing. Katniss is also described that way, and we ignore that.
She has olive-toned skin. That is correct. Yeah.
Because she's, what is it?
Yeah.
There's a specific type of human being from Appalachia that she's kind of based off of.
Oh, I don't know. That one I don't know.
Hold on.
But yeah, no, it's a big. I think it's a big problem when we look at how literature.
Mongolian.
Oh.
It is basically that's who Katniss is kind of based off. It's a historically like isolated like mixed race group of people in Appalachian Mountains. So it's kind of a mix between like Native American, the white people, and the African Americans like all came together and
Sure.
kind of like
and formed a community, and they probably come from. Okay, that's interesting.
So like it's a whole entire thing. However, nobody knows the exact like ratio for this.
Sure, yeah.
But it was sometime in like the 1600s when it began. They began to be a.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so that's who Katniss is based off of, and all of them have like olive toned skin. Yes, there's a wide variety of ranges, but like
sure.
It's dark on the dark.
But Jennifer Lawrence don't look like no Italian with a tan. Because that could not lead a movie. Don't get me started. Maybe get me started. I'm curious to see how things change as we move forward because, like I said, the influx matters. Like, in that time period, I read a lot and had a lot of conversations about what diversity was bringing to the table in terms of American literature in particular. And I think one of the things that we needed that time period for is to prove that we don't all have to be great at this.
No.
We just have to do this. You know what I mean? So that, like, speaking of women of color writers, so there's this video on YouTube. It's Nnedi Okorafor, Jewel Gomez, and Nala Hopkinson. Mm-hmm. They're all on a stage talking about, it starts out with them talking about Afrofuturism, but all three of them are like, because they don't really like the term Afrofuturism, so they're just kind of like...
What term do they like?
So Nnedi Okorafor is a big... She hates the term Afrofuturism.
What's the term we should be using for that?
So it depends. So the Afrofuturism debate is ongoing and constantly being... It was because the term itself was coined by a white man in the 90s. Now, mind you, he's a critic, so it was his... As Samuel R. Delaney points out...
Oh, so it's kind of like how...
It's meant for him to do... That's his job. That's literally...
So it's kind of like how in the 1930s, 1940s... quite literally the term avant-garde was just done by an art critic, and that's the only reason we have a term for what that time period was.
Yes.
And it's just because he made it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So this guy...
And that's why we have kitschy as the term, too, because during that time frame, that's what he was calling the art in Russia.
Oh, interesting.
There's like a whole thing.
Okay.
But like he was calling it that. The people were not calling it that, but that's what it was, and that's what became as the thing because of him.
Interesting.
So some random white man.
Yeah, well, unlike romantasy, which is a marketing term, Afrofuturism was coined by a guy whose job it is to look at literature and go,
And
what's
trends and
happening
terms
here? And he looked at the 70s and 80s, and he was like, the most significant thing to happen is that black people are writing about the future. What does that mean? What do we call it? And he coined the term Afrofuturism. And it's complicated because he's not exactly accurate, but he's not exactly wrong. And so
If they're writing about the future, isn't that just literally science fiction?
there's problems with it. I don't find it as problematic as others. What Nnedi Okorafor's argument against it is, she's like, that's fine. If you like Afrofuturism, if you write Afrofuturism, do with it whatever you want. But I don't write that, so stop calling my work that. And so she
Call it
coined,
science fiction.
Well, she coined the term African futurism because she genuinely believes that anyone from the African continent who is writing science fiction is writing science fiction in a way that has nothing to do with the United States.
No, that's true.
And I think she's right
she's
on the money.
actually
And so
completely accurate.
she's sort of like, she's like, my work fits under that umbrella, but so does the work of so many people that most Americans will never even read because Americans care about clout, they care about popularity, we care about those kinds of things.
I'm trying to find those books too to get, because some of those authors, they're interesting. I've read the same exact book about the same exact random place in New York 5 times with a slightly different turn every single time. I want to read about some random place in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, and
Let me read about what your historical fiction is in your country.
Well, and I think that's one of the more interesting things about when you look at adult epic fantasy. Thank you, N.K. Jemisin. We have to bow to the Queen.
We love you. She'll never listen to this, but we love you. I love you more.
If she ever listens to this and sent an email or any kind of hey, I'm a big, I would just pass out on the floor.
I would cease living.
Yeah, I'd just be like, I'm done. I'm good. Goodbye. Heaven, hell, whichever one of us is available, take me.
Basically, like when Dan Sean retweeted my.
Yes, that would exactly be it. I would just be like, wait, she knows I exist. She's heard my words. What is happening? Yeah. No, I think so. N.K. Jemisin, of course, as always, black woman,
Love her.
showed us how the game could be changed by simply doing it. She was doing work that wasn't recognized, and then suddenly the 5th season takes off and gets recognized. And you have out of her trilogy, the Broken Earth trilogy, out beyond that, you have R.F. Kuang starts publishing the Poppy War books, and her name just goes major and huge. You've got Andrea Stewart in that space doing what she does with her work, and a lot of people really love it. So you have a lot of women of color in particular, I would say, revolutionizing epic fantasy, because what they're doing, for example, I love the, I call them the Sapphic Brigade, because all they are is a bunch of lesbian women, usually British, writing about lesbian women doing insane things in fantasy worlds.
I need to buy a book for the kids. Nnedi Okorafor is writing a science fiction book called The Space Cat.
She is obsessed with cats, and that cat actually looks very much like her cat.
Comes out in August.
We might have to, yeah.
I want it, please.
Yeah, no,
please.
she's great.
Please and thank you.
So, so N.K. Jemisin, in the adult epic fantasy space, she changed that. But again, if you're looking at, to your point about not being able to find, articles about influence and impact and growth and all those kinds of things. One of the reasons is that it's constantly underrepresented, underappreciated, even in winning her 3rd Hugo in a row. Now, mind you, at this point, she was already historic for winning 2 in a row for the same series. No one in the history of science fiction and fantasy, or at least in the history of the Hugo Awards, no one in the history of the Hugo Awards has won 2 Hugos in a row. That means Ursula Le Guin, who, by the way, has won 2 Hugos, or two Best Novel Hugos in a row. So Ursula K. Le Guin didn't do it, although she has won 2 Hugos. Neil Gaiman has not done it, and he has won 2 Hugos. Other people have won 2 Hugos, but never consecutively, and never within the same category, and never in Best Novel, which is the toughest category that there is, for obvious reasons, or maybe for not so obvious reasons. I don't know. But the point is that is an extremely rare accomplishment. The fact that she ended up doing it for the 3rd year in a row, so her entire trilogy is Hugo Award winning, of course, is record breaking. But around the time that people were voting for the Hugos, the puppies. Anyone's familiar with Gamergate knows who the puppies are.
Wait.
The sad puppies.
No, I don't remember them.
So the sad puppies are basically the Gamergate version of the science fiction fantasy community that had an issue with the fact that, I don't know, women and gay people were writing
See,
books.
I was only in the Gamergate part. I wasn't in the science fiction part.
Yeah, so Gamergate and Sad Puppies overlap, but as Gamergate was dying down, they all left and went over into the SFF category and started fussing all of the same mess as the Sad Puppies. And they
So
were
what you're
dubbed
saying
the
is,
Sad
like-
Puppies by George R.R. Martin, which is fantastic. Because
So what you're saying is I'm going to turn around and go watch video essays about that. Great.
It was a nightmare.
Because I went from the Gamergate side to the Bloodsport side immediately. So,
I'm sorry. It was a nightmare, and Anya
Yeah.
Jemison, unfortunately, got not involved in the sense that she wanted to speak to
she
it.
was dragged into
She was dragged into it because she was a tentpole at that point, and yet, at the same time,
And she survived and they didn't. Congratulations.
right, she did. But if you look at her legacy in the immediate, right? If someone like that, let's just take Neil Gaiman for an example. If he had won 2 consecutive Hugos in a row and hadn't even won the third, there is no way in the world that his impact would have been forgotten by now. Rebecca Yarros, some white lady who wrote a love story about dragons, okay? I'm really minimizing the
Which
importance
is
of
really
these books.
funny because Mercedes
I don't know
Lackey
who
did
that
it
is,
first.
I haven't read. It's the author of Fourth Wing. I have not read them. Sarah J. Maas.
Mercedes Lackey did it first.
Fair. But Sarah J. Maas is another example, right? Like another example of a highly successful, white woman writing
Very smart.
nothing revolutionary. But because they have had the impact on the marketplace, everyone in their grandmother and granddaughter and every generation of all the women, they're like, you must read this. Women must read this. This is some of the best thing about women. And I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. We'll time out. I'm sorry. But N.K. Jemisin is sitting right over there. Right over there. And mind you, she ain't gonna make you feel good because her books don't make you feel good.
I don't wanna feel good.
They remind you that you live in this
A horrible
crap.
place.
a broken
And
earth.
Yes.
hello, and it's like, yeah, who wants to be reminded of that? Her books are hard. I have to take breaks from them. I have to. Did you just get
Took
that?
a second.
That's good. That's good. But then you find out, right, in watching her, or listening to her interviews or whatever, you find out that the source material for, like, one of the major source materials for 5th season is Full Metal Alchemist, like the manga, because she had read them and
And
loved
then
them,
also
and you're like,
Dragon Age.
but the idea that like a black woman in America takes as one of her source codes a Japanese mangaka female who is also revolutionizing her own genre, like
Yeah.
Shonen never has looked back after Full Metal Alchemist. Like she completely revolutionized her and Takahashi Sensei, who wrote Inuyasha. Both of them were putting those out at the same time, and so when those two, we talk about the big three, who were written by dudes, and they're great, they're successful, they're literally 15 years longer than every other anime or manga out there. That's great. But the two people who actually changed the way in which we see certain things crop up in shonen, including women being able to write freely and do whatever they want in shonen, is the creator of Inuyasha and the creator of Full Metal Alchemist, who are both, by the way, Japanese women. So it's like that legacy exists, but you still have to squint and find it, right? You have to still find out who their people are, who inspired them, and all that kind of thing. And they still have to. I see people now who are obviously inspired by N.K. Jemisin, because I read them and I go, yeah, you read 100,000 Kingdoms, didn't you? And you just decided to put it in space. I'm here with you. They still have to fight to have a career, despite the fact that we have proven over and over and over and over again that women of color, when they get down to business, can really write a banger. Like, can break literal records. Because not only did she win 3 Hugos in the Best Novel category, she won in 5 years, in a stretch of 5 years, a Hugo every year. For 5 years! Again, no one else has done that. So why do we continue to praise, this guy, that woman, that person? If you look at all of them, they're very lily, That's all I can say, and that's it.
Tony just went on a whole entire rant.
I tend to
was
do
great. That was great, actually.
Thanks.
I don't even know how to follow that up at this point.
I mean, I'm here for questions.
I have a question that so when you mentioned
Glad somebody does.
when you mentioned the I think it was in 2014, right around when this push started. How much influence do you think the was it the Center for Diverse Books, or what was the?
So it was We Need Diverse Books.
We Need Diverse Books. How much of an impact do you think that had on the influx around that time?
I think it would have been extremely difficult without it. I don't know if it would have been impossible, because I never like to look at a scenario and be like, oh, like for example, I'm sure there are people who would say this, like, oh, the current state of the country would not be what it was if we didn't have Obama first, and then followed up with, that's crap, because it ignores all the rest of American history. Like, I'm sorry, you don't get to.
And it's a technically true statement, because obviously, we couldn't be where we are without.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's like you couldn't get to 2025 without 2024. Well, no, duh,
That's kind of how time works.
Yeah, but I think what We Need Diverse Books did is it took that, like, those 4 words so seriously, and it went into all of the corners that we had not gone into beforehand. Well, we had gone into beforehand, but it was like, for example, one of the actual, like, core founders of the Romance Writers of America is a black woman.
Ooh.
Editor.
Okay.
Who basically had heard the rumblings and was like, well, I'm an editor over here, but I'm not getting a whole lot from my people. We need to start an organization and get these people paid, and then I'll start hearing from people. And what do you know? She did, So it takes things like that, right? And it pulls them all to this one website in this one place that you can, if you go there, if you start to see changes because they're synthesizing all of those changes. Mm-hmm. So any news of, like, a new editor or a new agent or a new author or a new book, all of that was being streamlined through the efforts of We Need Diverse Books. And by the way, when it first started, it was not hot. Everybody was like, we don't know how we feel about this. I mean, we get it, we need diverse books, but, like, that's like saying books save lives. Do they really? It was this whole, like, hothouse debate for a few years. And then 2016 happened.
Why? What happened in 2016?
Let's not talk about it. Let's not talk about it.
We don't talk about Bruno.
We still don't talk about Bruno.
Do you not get that reference?
The film Bruno?
No.
Okay, well, I guess I don't know. I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, you're not a child, and you're not. I don't know. It was from that movie. What was the movie?
It's from Encanto.
Encanto, thank you.
Okay, I've never seen Encanto.
Yeah, exactly. I figured that was anyway. It comes from Encanto. Anyway, so yes, I think that it helped more than anything. I think something else might have come along within that time period that would have built that same kind of emphasis, but to have an organization that did its homework the way that they did, and the CEO and the COO, CEO is a Chinese American woman, mm-hmm. COO is a black woman. I mean, they were serious and they meant it, and I think that's the thing that I have always respected and admired about authors of color who are women, is that even when they're not so great, like as authors, like as writers, their efforts are always more serious than most white American authors, because most white American authors want to be recognized for what their work is, or they want to quote unquote revolutionize the game by, I don't know, telling the exact same story we've heard a million times.
Except, instead of with a person over here with goat legs, a satyr, we have a goose.
Yeah.
Or move it to New York.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no. It's always like they're like, oh, we're reinventing the wheel, and you look at it and you're like, but it's still a wheel.
We moved from this spoke right here up to the next one. Congratulations.
Yeah, which is again not to say
it's just a different color this time.
It's not to say that women of color make better work simply because they're women of color. No, it's because in the trenches, which most people don't see, in the trenches, they're being told, we don't have room for your story right now because we already have someone who's done that. And they wrote a character of color, and then you see the book come out, and you're like, and you look on the back flap, and you're like, oh, so you had a white lady who wrote a woman of color, and they're described with brown chestnut skin and brown hair, and you're like, that's a woman of color. Please. So it's still happening.
The Eurocentric girl.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like, I mean, there was a black woman on Twitter last year who was jumped because she introduced the concept for her book because it had just sold, and it was fascinating because it was literally like, this girl develops the powers of the sun, right? But she's an African girl. Literally, Twitter jumped on them because they were like, but there's already this book by this person. You only care about this book because it's by a black woman. And everyone was like, wait a minute. This book sold 2 months before the other person's book. And also, nobody controls a kid getting the power of the sun as a property. And so everyone started trolling the trollers by going, oh, I love this anime, but it can't exist because they control the power of the sun, and that can only go to this one other author. And it was just like, so it's still happening. That's the problem, is that, you know, the work of female writers of color, they're already female, so that, you know, 1/, but then they're not women of color in America, and so they're just being devalued. So, you know.
Stop devaluing my women, please. Thank you.
Go find somebody, read them, and if they suck, find somebody else and read them.
Stop devaluing my women. That's pretty.
That too.